time for an embarrassing confession. I spent most of my early years being an SJW on Tumblr. I was young and naive, and I genuinely believed that arguing about politics with random people online was a good way to cause positive change in the world, when actually it was a huge waste of time and energy. So nowadays I try not to get political. My primary focus as a content creator is to be entertaining and informative. But with a topic like Snoot Game, where most of the discussion revolves around identity politics, it's kind of inevitable that some of that is going to bleed into this one a bit. Now, if you think Cavemanon's decision to have Fang detransition in the good ending was offensive and mean-spirited, I'm not here to tell you you're wrong, or even try to change your mind about it. Art is subjective and your interpretation is valid. I'm just here to explain my personal experience with and my opinions on Snoot Game. Spoilers. I first learned about Snoot Game from Dumbsville's Goodbye Volcano High review. I got curious about it and went to the TV Tropes page, which doesn't exist anymore due to overwhelming toxicity, and saw this. This sounded like the most offensive thing ever. I couldn't believe people were insisting that this game was good, so I posted about it on Twitter, where I was almost immediately told that I shouldn't trust TV Tropes, and also that the gun violence ending wasn't connected to Fang's gender identity. Every person who talked to me about it was polite and rational, so I decided to actually play the game myself and form my own opinion of it rather than just going off of what other people were saying. And it was actually pretty great.
Totally worth selling out my people for.
How did we get here, though? Well, when the Goodbye Volcano High trailer was revealed, people had mixed reactions. Most people were either confused and amused, or cringing. Everybody in chat say no! For whatever reason, some people at 4chan really latched onto the game, mainly the non-binary protagonist Fang. According to fellow YouTuber The History of Things That I Like, two early pieces of fan art that heavily influenced Snoot Game were a drawing of what would later become the infamous Ending 1, and a drawing of Fang as a well-behaved church girl, which would go on to inspire Ending 3. For the record, I think the Uno reverse card of simply presenting Fang as a religious conservative is pretty funny, but I don't condone the artist who drew Fang shooting people. That's just in bad taste and is extremely insensitive to victims and survivors of gun violence. What if I told you, though, that a team of indie game developers would take both of these ideas and handle them seriously and respectfully? And that they came from 4chan of all places? Right, I wasn't expecting that either. A group of anonymous 4chan users would form a team called Caveman, who released Snoot Game in 2021, almost immediately overshadowing GVH, which hadn't come out when it was supposed to because it was currently in development hell due to the head writer and narrative director leaving the project. Co-op, the developers of GVH, were understandably both threatened and upset by the existence of Snoot Game, as it seemed to be a mockery of everything they were trying to accomplish. In what I would describe as a heavily biased Kotaku article, they straight up described Snoot Game as an anti-LGBT, anti-fan game with alt-right leaning morals. Now this is due in no small part to some fans of Snoot Game harassing and trolling co-op, which is not okay. Anyone who did this, congratulations, you're ending to Anon, and you should think about what you did. Though it seems like the main reason co-op refuses to allow discussion of Snoot Game in their Discord is because it's mostly people comparing GVH negatively to Snoot Game. This article really tries to make it seem like co-op studios are some kind of champion of queer representation and that Caveman is some villain spreading hatred, but what did co-op actually do with their queer characters? Nothing. They all die. Not only do they all die, but the game barely focuses on the LGBT aspect. I played it 2.5 times without even realizing that Rose is trans. Reed gets a boyfriend, it's barely acknowledged. My point is, all co-op had to do to not be overshadowed by Snoot Game was to create a story that people found equally, if not more compelling. They did not. So, what is Snoot Game about? Part 1. Anon is a jerk and you should not be like him. The main character is Anon Y. Mus. A lot of people who haven't played the game are under the impression that Anon is a self-insert character for the player to live out the fantasy of romancing a goth pterodactyl and convincing them to become straight. He isn't, and it's not. Anon is as much of a parody as anything else in this game. He's an exaggerated stereotype of a 4chan Anon, terminally online and constantly using offensive slurs towards anything and everything around him. The first choice the game gives us as him is to decide how he's gonna make people online angry. He isn't shown with a face, not because we're supposed to see ourselves as him, but as a reflection of his desire to not be known by anyone. Anon went through a traumatic experience at his previous high school. which led him to transfer schools halfway through the first semester and move. He can now only afford a tiny apartment in a bad part of town called Skin Row. He arrives at Volcano High and immediately assumes that everyone looking at him must be judging him and calling him slurs, clearly projecting his own judgmental nature onto the people around him. He focuses on Fang, though at this point in time he doesn't know who they are, noting that their monochrome color palette makes them stand out in a sea of brightly colored dinosaurs. Anon is quick to dismiss them, in his narration. Anon goes around to the side of the school and sits on a rickety old bench. Here he realizes that any relief he felt from no longer being at his old school has been replaced by fear of the unknown. Plus, his dad paid for the apartment under the strict stipulation that after he graduates, he's either going straight to college or straight into the military, and his dad doesn't seem to care which one. Two students approach Anon just as the bench he's sitting on breaks. This is Naomi and Nasser, the captain of the track team and his girlfriend. They're Anon's welcoming committee. Naomi hands Anon a brochure and fast-tracks him into the meal assistance program. Nasser's quick to excuse himself to help some students carry an amplifier into the building, and Naomi is visibly disappointed by him leaving, but she's quick to mask her emotions. Naomi grabs Anon by the hand, which causes him to panic, until he remembers that she has a boyfriend. Naomi takes Anon to the office, but we can't get in to speak to the principal as he's busy with another student. Anon ends up going to his first class, English, which he coincidentally shares with Naomi. The teacher Jim Suki speaks in a stereotypical accent so thick that he's nearly incomprehensible. He asks Anon to introduce himself to the class. Naomi asks why he transferred schools, which causes him to freeze up in panic until the teacher lets him know he can return to his seats. Eventually, lunchtime rolls around and he ends up sitting with Naomi and Nasser. Nasser finds out about Anon's financial issues and he invites Anon to his sibling, Fang's concert. It's happening in the auditorium after school, and there's going to be free pizza. Anon could care less about the music, but free food is free food, so he agrees. After school, Nasser leads Anon to the auditorium. Here we meet Principal Spears for the first time. Based on Adult Swim's Primal, Anon sits in the back and notices that everyone in the crowd is talking shit about the band. Anon points this out to Nasser, who gets very angry, confessing that he invited the audience just so Fang could have an audience, otherwise people wouldn't have shown up. Despite this, Fang isn't grateful at all, and is insistent that Nasser can't be at the concert because he'll ruin it, even going so far as to mock his disability. Nasser leaves and the show starts. The band doesn't even introduce themselves, they just start playing, and the sound is heavy and awkward. Anon realizes this is because they have two basses and no lead guitar. The audience begins loudly jeering and mocking them, and one dinosaur refers to Fang as a Tumblersaurus Rex. A nod to the age-old rivalry between Tumblr and 4chan. Anon joins in on the laughter, and the other two members leave the stage, but Fang stays out to scream at the audience, flipping them off and insulting them. But this just makes them laugh harder. Remember, don't feed the trolls. On his way out of the auditorium, Spears stops Anon. He tells him that he's disappointed in his behavior and says the most important line in the game. You aren't the only person in the world. Everyone is dealing with their own struggles. On his way home, Anon thinks about what Spears said and feels bad for laughing at Nasser's sibling after he was so nice to him. The next day, we have a choice to either go straight to Spears' office like he told us, or to find Nasser and talk to him about the concert. Either way, you'll witness Trish getting physically violent with the students who laughed at them, and it's at this point I have to address the game's use of fictional slurs. Now, I think the dinosaurs calling humans skinnies and the humans calling dinosaurs meteor dodgers is actually pretty funny, and it implies a lot of world building that they don't have to directly exposit by explaining it. But for whatever reason, they decided to turn the N-word into the T-word, which Anon isn't afraid to say around Trish. I think this is unnecessary and juvenile, and it almost feels like it was thrown in just to be edgy. Anon also regularly uses homophobic and ableist slurs, but I can give this a pass since it's a character flaw that he grows out of in the good endings, as opposed to an issue with the world building. Realizing that Trish will probably beat him up if she finds out he was there, Anon decides that he can't let the band find out he was at the concert. No matter what choice you make, Anon will end up in Spears' office. But he doesn't realize he's here to get financial aid, so Spears calls in Naomi to go over the paperwork and confirm that Anon did actually request this himself. That seems unusual. As Anon leaves Spears' office with his new lunch card, he notices the trophy cases, with many of the awards belonging to Nasser and Naomi. He pauses at an award for the school's efforts to prevent bullying and reflects that these programs didn't stop him from being bullied at his old school. At lunch, he sits with Nasser and Naomi again, although he ignores Naomi and mainly speaks to Nasser. He says Fang stayed home from school because of how depressed they were after the concert, and Anon tells Nasser what happened, leaving out the part where he laughed. The next day, Naomi meets up with Anon and vents her concerns about Nasser, mainly that he tries to do too much and is constantly worrying about Fang. It's notable that Naomi doesn't acknowledge Fang's gender identity. Anon sees Fang by themselves in the hallway. They look upset and seem to be picking at their arm. They aggressively ask if he's seen their friends before leaving. In science class, where the teacher is based on Dr. Farnsworth from Futurama, Fang and Anon end up working together. Anon misgenders Fang when the teacher comes to check on them, and instead of correcting him about it like an emotionally stable person, Fang stands up and goes into a prepared rant, only for the teacher to cut them off and speak to them in the hallway. Anon speculates that Fang was trying to reenact one of those "and then everyone clapped" memes. In case you don't know what I'm talking about, this is the tendency for people to write fake stories about themselves being cool, and include the detail that everyone around them applauded them. This is what Fang ultimately wants, to be recognized and praised by the people around them. But the way they lash out at everyone just pushes them away. Realistically, of course this doesn't happen. In fact, nobody in the room seems to care one way or another. Fang comes back in the room and apologies are exchanged. The next class is math, which is taught by Carl from Aqua Teen Hunger Force. Anon realizes that he left his math book at home and accidentally grabbed an anime art book, which he is mortified about anyone seeing for some reason. He gets called up to solve a math problem, but trips and lands on Reed, the band's drummer's, desk. He ends up sitting with Reed and Trish, who calls Anon a bigot in the same sentence that she also calls him a slur. Trish tells Anon that Fang is happy, that she helped them get through a rough time, and they don't need anyone in their life making them upset or confused. The fact that Fang could possibly become confused is an early indication that Fang maybe hasn't settled into this new identity as comfortably as Trish seems to think. On the way to lunch, Anon realizes that he grabbed Reed's backpack by mistake and realizes that Reed not only has a bong, but a miniature cartel worth of illegal substances. Although Anon is less concerned about being caught holding this stuff and more worried that Reed will see his anime book. They meet up and the two switch bags. Reed finds out that Anon needs financial aid and he feels bad and invites him to hang out with the band. Even Trish emphasizes with Anon and Fang soon joins them. Reed and Anon talk about video games. I like the puns, Stony and X-Rocks. Reed says that Stony games are basically just movies, and to prove his point, the game links you to the actual Goodbye Volcano High reveal trailer, which I hadn't seen at the time. Once it got to this shot of Fang, I ended up laughing so hard that I accidentally hit a button and rewound the video. Reed invites Anon to watch them practice, only everybody runs off because Nasser and Naomi arrived. Naomi is extremely interested in what Fang and Anon were talking about, implying that a mutual friendship would be good for Fang. Eventually, the two leave. 1 week later, in math class, Trish confronts Anon for explaining to Fang how to make a railgun with magnets in their science class. Trish is very insistent that Anon not encourage any interest Fang might have in firearms. This causes people to stare, so Reed breaks the tension in his own Reedy way. At lunch, Anon sits with Naomi and Nasser, who is falling asleep in his chair. He says that last night he heard noises and saw Fang at 1 a.m. just staring at the microwave and they refused to speak to him. So he went and got their dad, thinking he would help, and he didn't, at all. He and Fang just got into a shouting match, and Nasser wasn't able to sleep. He eventually passes out in his chair, and Naomi and Anon have to carry him to the nurse's office. We can really see why Naomi is concerned about the amount of stress Fang is putting on Nasser. Part 2. Your choices matter. On the way to his next class, Anon literally bumps into Stella, who astute viewers will notice looks nothing like her GVH counterpart. This is because at the time of production, Caveman only had GVH's official website and the trailer to go off of. And Stella didn't have a character page, so her design was based on the few times she appeared in the trailer and concept art. Sage also didn't have a character page, and he ended up not being in the game at all because there was literally no information on him. It's a shame because I'm curious to see how they would have handled his character. Stella notices that Anon has one of her tarot cards stuck to his shirt. Judgment. She warns him that he'll have to make important decisions and leaves. After meeting Stella, your choices will start to have real stakes. Turns out every choice we made before this was easy mode, and most of them didn't really matter. Now, though, it's literally a matter of life and death. The next class is music, which Anon shares with Fang. Anon notices them about to start playing a guitar and braces himself, only for it to actually sound good. Huh. By the way, the music teacher is based on Ringo Starr, specifically his design from the Yellow Submarine. I really like this a lot. Anon and Fang end up talking, and Fang opens up about wanting to play the guitar in their band since it would sound much better, but Trish insists that 2 basses are the way to go because it makes them stand out. It seems like Trish might value being unique over being likable. Anon bets Fang that their band would be better off with a guitar, and Fang takes him up on it, bringing Anon and an extra guitar to the auditorium where the band rehearses after school. Trish is completely against switching to guitar and seems mad at Anon for being here. They agree to play one of their songs with double bass and one with the guitar to see which one sounds better. The song titles are all hilarious, by the way. GVH had titles like My Mother is a Robot Beep Boop and Get Bent Jimmy Two-Face, and Snoot Game has titles like I need meth money by Tuesday night, and if I don't get it, I will stomp on your child. I gave the special kids the Jonestown special, and now I'm going to jail. I'm not sure why, but the burglar joined my threesome. Anon can either speak up in favor of Fang or stay quiet, in which case Reed will be the one to speak up. After the band plays both songs, it's decided by vote to switch to guitar, with Trish being the only opposing vote. Fang invites Anon to stay and listen to them practice, but he mentions pizza, which reminds him of the concert that he doesn't want them to find out he was at, so he makes an excuse and leaves. The next day at lunch, Naomi and Nasser approach Anon, and we learn that Naomi has memorized Anon's schedule. Anon likes Nasser, but finds Naomi irritating, so he lets them know that he's eating with Fang. Naomi is really happy that Anon is hanging out with Fang. Anon gets to the auditorium where the band is hanging out, and Fang and Anon end up bonding over their mutual hatred for Naomi. Also, Trish shows off the band poster she made. It's spelled wrong. She also tells Anon that she believes Nasser ruined their concert on purpose by inviting a bunch of quote-unquote jerks to make fun of them. And Fang seems to echo this idea. Trish and Fang can't accept any responsibility for their performance going badly. Anon tries to disagree, but Trish says that no one cares what he thinks. The bell rings, and Anon and Fang walk to class and talk about their taste in music. In class, Anon struggles with the worksheet and has the option to ask Fang for help. The right thing to do is ask, otherwise Reed will correct you. Oh yeah, Reed is here. He's the school mascot and he needs a tardy slip signed. The game does this a few times. Reed will usually indicate which choices are correct in the first half. I've seen people complain that this isn't subtle, but I think this happens for a good reason. Reed is basically here to make sure that no one can get ending 1 by accident. You have to go out of your way to be the worst person you can be to get it. Anon and Fang work together and end up talking about music. Fang's been playing instruments for basically their whole life since their grandma taught them to play church songs on piano, while Anon doesn't really care for the subject. Fang asks why he's here then, and it turns out he needed an elective, and Naomi said that everything was full except for music. Fang reflects that Anon doesn't seem to have trouble making friends, and therefore must have left his old school because he fucked up royally. They excuse themselves to go to the bathroom and leave their phone on the desk. Anon is now paranoid that Trish must have found out why he left his old school and that she and Fang are talking about him in their texts behind his back. He grabs Fang's phone and glances around the room to see if anyone is looking. To his horror, Reed, in his King Rex costume, looms at the back of the room in a haze of weed smoke, but fortunately he's asleep. Anon opens Fang's text message app. There's nothing about Anon. Instead, we see that Trish appears to be Fang's only emotional support. It seems like they have a very codependent relationship, and Anon learns that Fang went into a major depressive episode and had an existential crisis after the concert, worrying that they won't ever amount to anything in life. Anon puts the phone down and feels like a scumbag for invading Fang's privacy, rightly so, and for laughing at them. Fang comes back and they finish their worksheets, with Fang offering to help him again if he needs it, no doubt making Anon feel even worse. We cut to Saturday. Anon is walking to school for weekend detention, making sure to write inflammatory posts on random hobby message boards as he goes. Apparently, the school pays attention to what people use the school's Wi-Fi for, and Anon used a ton of their bandwidth to torrent anime. He arrives at the school garden, where other students are working with the gardening club for detention. Here we meet Rosa, a stereotypical Latina, complete with Catholicism. Oh yeah, Christianity exists in this setting, and Jesus was a raptor. He was crucified on a cross made out of stone, I'm not sure how they managed to nail him to it, and also their Bible was first documented as a cave painting. I am super curious about the world building. Fang and Stella are also here. Anon calls Stella a weirdo to her face, and Rosa comforts her. We find out that Fang is an atheist. We're just checking all of the edgy boxes, aren't we? Principal Spears mentions to Anon that he has Naomi to thank that he ended up here instead of regular detention because she was insistent that it would be more productive. Anon and Fang get assigned to prune the vines growing on the school fences. Fang prunes, and Anon holds the ladder. Fang disregards Anon and keeps dropping the pruned vines on him, which is causing his skin to get red and itchy. He tries to get Fang's attention by yelling, but they don't listen. We see a creep shot, and we have the choice to get Fang's attention by grabbing their ankle or their tail. But either way, a clump of vines lands in Anon's eyes, and he ends up grabbing their tail. This causes Fang to angrily shove Anon into one of the flower beds, which pisses off Rosa, who rushes over. They both get reassigned to weeding in light of the fact that Anon is allergic to the vines, and Fang and Anon end up talking about their worldviews. They find out that they actually have a lot in common. Fang gets really excited and explains their belief that most people on the planet are useless nobodies who are actively detrimental to society, comparing them to weeds. They alarmingly go on to list Nasser, Naomi, Stella, Rosa, and even Reed as being in this group, as well as everyone who laughed at them at their concert, and Anon agrees, saying that the people at the concert didn't even have good insults, accidentally revealing that he was at the concert in the process. Fang's mood abruptly swings to anger, and they confront Anon about him lying. Here we have the choice to either come clean or joke about it. Either way, Fang will run away. Rosa and Stella saw the whole thing and encourage Anon to go after them. He tracks them down to the parking lot where they are manically trying to break into a teacher's car. Anon talks them down, only for the car's owner to begin chasing them. They duck back into the school to escape the owner, and Anon apologizes to Fang for laughing, saying that he was just there for the food and that he never expected to actually get to know Fang and become friends with them. Stella and Rosa bring them back to detention, where Anon has to stay extra hours for destroying so many of Rosa's flower beds. Fang sticks around to wait for him so they can talk. Of course, they aren't mad at him for being in the crowd, they're mad at him for lying about it, but friends are hard to come by and they don't want to lose Anon over this. They apologize for comparing him to a weed, and they say that he's more like a mushroom, something that's good for the environment. A month later, Anon is hanging out with the band in the auditorium at lunch. Reed is fixing a projector, and Trish confronts Anon about Fang's mood. Fang isn't eating and seems depressed, and won't even talk to Trish about it. Trish blames Anon for this, since he's the only new thing here. Anon says he'll ask them about it in music, and Reed finishes fixing the projector. They all discuss what to watch on it, and Anon hurries away to class before his love of anime can be revealed. Fang doesn't show up to music class, so Anon gets a hall pass, which is just a fully functional guitar with the word hall pass written on it in Sharpie. He tracks Fang up to the roof and finds them sitting down surrounded by their own feathers. They're also bleeding in several places. They say that this is preening and try to act like it's normal, but it's clearly a form of self-harm. Fang opens up to Anon about how they don't feel recognized or appreciated, that they've spent years trying to make their band work and have nothing to show for it. They also resent Nasser for being perfect, seemingly without any effort. Fang buries their head in their knees, and I decide it's time for Anon to say something. He tries to reassure Fang as best he can, and says that there isn't much in the way of Fang and Nasser getting along, but is he right? Fang hugs Anon and then takes the hall pass from him, playing a new song with lyrics that reference GBH. Anon helps Fang stand up and they bump their snoot into his face, a kind of accidental smooch. The mood is awkward, and then Spears kicks the door to the roof open, sending it flying and putting a huge hole in the safety fence. He demands to know what they're both doing up here and makes them turn out their pockets. Anon has nothing, but Fang has a box of cigarettes that Spears proceeds to, confiscate. He sends Fang to the nurse and Anon back to class. Anon starts to wonder if he might have feelings for Fang. Part 3. Naomi's Game. Sometime later, Anon gets invited along to help Fang find a venue for their band to play at. It would have been Trish, but she has an appointment to get her horn worked on. Anon catches a bus to Fang's neighborhood, which is very affluent, especially compared to Skin Row. Anon gets to Fang's house, and their father, Ripley, opens the door, somehow sensing Anon's presence before he knocks or texts Fang. He's intimidating and physically threatening. Fortunately, Fang's mom interrupts and invites Anon indoors. These two are both references to the Metroid series. We learn that Fang's legal name is Lucy, and like many young people, they have a pattern of adopting different personas, with punk rocker being the latest, and a previous one being pirate cheerleader. Anon is super uncomfortable around Fang's parents. Fortunately, Nasser is here to cut the tension a bit, and so is Naomi for some reason. She is really pushing the idea that Anon and Fang are going on a date. which causes Ripley to assign Nasser and Naomi as chaperones. Fang's parents seem very old-fashioned. Their mom seems to be stuck in the good old days when Fang was a little girl and things were simpler. It's important to note that we never see her with her eyes open, like she's intentionally blind to all the negativity in their home. Fang's father is a police officer, and he's convinced that they're living a degenerate lifestyle, and he isn't afraid to get into shouting matches with them about it. It's pretty clear where a lot of their anger issues come from. And also, why Trish has been the only person Fang feels like they can rely on. We can also see where most of Nasser's stress comes from. In GVH, Nasser tells Fang that after they came out as non-binary, all their parents' expectations for normal fell onto him. But we never actually get to see that. At no point in GVH are Fang and Nasser even in the same room as their parents. In Snoot Game, we actually get to see how their home life is, and it explains so much. Anon is very insistent that this isn't a date, and that they're only going to look for a venue, but no one is buying that except Nasser. They all pile into Nasser's car, the NASCAR, and they end up walking around downtown. And Naomi, who is usually perky and overbearing, has shifted into overdrive, chattering non-stop. She also keeps suggesting terrible venues like 5-star restaurants that obviously wouldn't allow someone dressed like Fang to even enter the building. Naomi's attitude is wearing on Fang, who looks like they're about to kill her, so they all decide to go and hang out in a park to take a breather. Nasser goes to the bathroom, and Fang lies about needing to use the bathroom so they can go and smoke a cigarette. While Naomi is alone with Anon, she asks how Fang is doing, which Anon realizes is weird, because Nasser is always telling Naomi what's up with Fang, so why would she need Anon to tell her? He thinks about how ever since he first arrived at Volcano High, Naomi has been in his business, and Naomi is visibly disappointed by him leaving, but she's quick to mask her emotions. Fierce calls in Naomi to go over the paperwork and confirm that Anon did actually request this. Naomi doesn't acknowledge Fang's gender identity. Naomi is extremely interested. Naomi has memorized Anon's schedule. He needed an elective, and Naomi said that everything was full except for music.
They played us like a damn fiddle!
It becomes clear since day one that Naomi has been pulling strings so that Anon and Fang will have to spend time together, so that Fang can maybe have someone to rely on besides Nasser, giving Nasser more time and energy to devote to Naomi. She also seems to be under the impression that Anon will be able to fix Fang, which is all kinds of messed up. Anon feels betrayed and used, and we have the option to wait for Fang or to leave. I chose to stay because Anon being manipulated wasn't Fang's fault. They're as much of a victim here as he is. Once Fang returns, they all go back to walking around, and Naomi is still irritating, probably on purpose, because Anon's next choice is to either ask Fang to ask Nasser if they can split up, or to ask him himself. Asking Fang is both the correct thing to do, and results in this funny scene. Hold on a second. Dad said he'll do to me anything that you do to Fang. What? Fang, you gotta promise not to let Anon do anything creepy. That's fucking rude. Oh god, what is that artwork? Oh god, no. They agree to split up, and Fang leads Anon to a neighborhood called Little Trudon, where they go through a bustling flea market. Here we meet a dude based on Xavier Renegade Angel who sells Anon a tiny Roomba that cleans cell phones. And I shit you not, even this vacuum will have character development by the end of the story. His name is Metal Gear Rainbow, and I love him. The vendor directs Fang and Anon to Dino Mo's Pizza. It's owned by a T-Rex named Mo, who I believe is based on Peppino from Pizza Tower. He's Fang's uncle, not by blood, obviously. He's a very close friend of Fang's dad. He also calls Fang Lucy, and they protest a bit but don't really seem to mind. He assumes that Fang and Anon are on a date, so he hooks them up with a free pizza, a private table, and a candle. It basically is a date at this point. Fang excuses themselves to use the bathroom for real this time, and Anon and Mo end up talking. Mo gives Anon some really good advice, that he can't fix all of Fang's problems. He needs to support them so that they can fix their own problems. Anon also mentions that Fang's band needs a place to play, and Mo tells Anon that they can play here anytime. Anon gives Fang the news when they get back, and Fang hugs Anon in joy. It's pretty cute. They call Nasser to pick them up, and when they get home, Fang's parents are eager to hear how the outing went, although for very different reasons. Anon decides to stand up to Ripley's intimidation tactics. He admits to himself that yes, this was a date, and he announces to Fang's family that it went well and that he would love to do this again sometime. Once Anon leaves the house, he loses his nerve immediately and his anxiety starts acting up. So he decides to sit down and cool off for a bit, when Nasser suddenly gets shoved out the door by his dad. Nasser sees Anon and vents his frustrations. Ripley blames Nasser for letting Fang and Anon go off alone together, and he's worried that Fang is going to end up in jail or on drugs if they stay on the path that they're on.
Foreshadowing is a literary device in which...
With Fang being the problem child, Nasser doesn't feel like he's allowed to make mistakes or have problems of his own. Anon tells Nasser what Uncle Mo told him, that he can't fix Fang's problems for them, but instead needs to support them so they can fix their own problems. Nasser freaks out because if Mo was willing to give Anon that kind of advice, then he and Fang must be serious. He panics over how their dad will react, and they both end up talking about their love lives. Eventually, Nasser determines that his dad has had enough time and beer to calm down, and heads back inside, but not before being casually racist out of nowhere. And for what it's worth, you're not like the monkeys we hear about all the time on Dino News Network. Anon ends up rushing to catch the last bus. We skip ahead to the night of the concert. Everyone is setting up, and we get another creep shot of Fang, which I'm censoring because I don't want to see a pterodactyl's vulva outlined in black leather, and I'm assuming most of you don't either. Anon drags a table to the suspiciously big back room, which has buckets of cement mix for some reason. Stella meets up with Anon and does another tarot reading. We get the Hermit inverted. After she leaves, Anon trips over some power cords and asks Trish if he should move the cables. She says no, Reed said it would be fine, and I decide to trust Reed, even though he's currently trying to use the fog machine to dose the audience with carfentanil. By the way, did you know that the Grateful Dead once dosed an entire TV studio before a performance by putting LSD in the free coffee machine? Crazy, right? Anyway, the show goes off without a hitch, and Fang is super happy about it. Trish isn't content and says that their next show needs to be even bigger than this one before going out to sell merch. Anon ends up helping to clean the venue, despite not even knowing how to mop a floor. Reed lets Anon know that this is the first show they've done that people have actually liked. He also mentions that Fang has only been identifying as non-binary for about a year. So maybe that's why none of their family is used to it yet. Trish and Fang join the conversation, and Trish tries to get details about what happened at his old school. Fortunately, before anything can be revealed, Mo kicks everyone out so he can deal with business. Part 4, Trish's Betrayal. Sometime later at school, Spears announces that midterms are coming up, and he emphasizes being prepared for the test. Outside the school, Reed goes down for a power nap, and Trish invites Fang to the library to study, and makes it clear that Anon is not invited. Fang says that they just want to go home, and after Trish leaves, Fang invites Anon to their house. When we get there, though, Fang doesn't seem all that interested in studying. We have a choice to slack off with Fang or to focus on studying. Based on Spears' warning, I chose studying. Suddenly, Fang's mom arrives home, and while she is embarrassing, she isn't against the idea of Fang and Anon being together, and even invites him to dinner. Anon turns down the invitation, though, to avoid dealing with Fang's dad. But Fang's mom makes sure to show off their baby pictures before he goes. While Anon waits for the bus, a nice lady selling hot dogs lets us know that studying was a mistake. Some time passes, and it's time for another assembly. This one is for the senior class about college preparation. Anon finds the band near the front of the auditorium, away from their normal place because Reed is using the newly repaired projector to help with Naomi's presentation. Anon zones out during her speech and just focuses on the pictures. It's standard clip art, up until we get a slide of Anon that he made in Photoshop 2 years ago of himself with an anime girl. Everyone is in stunned silence before erupting into laughter. Reed tries to change the slide, only for more, even cringier ones to appear. Eventually, Nasser just smashes the projector out of desperation, breaking it once again. He asks Reed what happened, and Reed says that Trish gave him the USB with the slideshow on it. Everyone looks at where Trish was sitting, and she's gone, bolting towards the exit. Fortunately, Spears is able to grab her, literally. He dismisses all of the students except for Trish and Anon, who are asked to come to the office. Anon says that this is exactly like what happened at his old school, and we finally have enough pieces to put together what happened to cause Anon to suddenly transfer schools. Clearly, these same pictures got leaked back at rock bottom. This explains why Anon panics so much anytime someone comes close to finding out that he likes anime, and why he calls Stella a weirdo for openly being a fan. He's been bullied to the point where he believes it's a shameful hobby that he can't share with anyone. Fang goes with Anon to the office, and Reed is close behind. He apologizes for not checking the slideshow before he used it, but he insists that Trish is actually a good person deep down, and asks Anon to consider things from her point of view. And we get 3 choices. It's obvious what the right one is. They get interrupted by the sound of Spears yelling at Trish and Trish crying. Spears calls Anon into the office, and Trish unloads on him, saying that she helped Fang come out of their shell and that their band was doing just fine before he showed up, despite the fact that Fang is definitely not okay, and Anon helped set up the only good show they ever had. Trish then blatantly projects onto Anon, calling him a selfish control freak, and Anon has the option to talk to her or ignore her. I chose to talk, and after Anon leaves the office, I decide to have him wait for Trish with Reed and Fang. Trish comes out of the office, and Fang tells her off for humiliating Anon like that, saying that she's just as bad as the jerks who made fun of them at the beginning of the year. They also announce that they're taking a break from the band, and then they go wait outside. Anon tells Trish that he does have feelings for Fang, which upsets her even more, and Anon goes to leave. Reed tells him that he did the right thing and that he should let Fang know how he feels before going to support Trish. Anon and Fang walk out of the building together while being mocked by most of the student body, except Stella. She is too good for this world. Once they get outside, someone throws an empty soda can at Anon, and no matter what we do, it hits him, sending him tumbling down the concrete stairs. Fun fact, they didn't just get a pre-made sound effect of Anon falling down the stairs and into the bushes. They made a Foley dummy for them to abuse. Because it's 4chan, of course, they named it Tardo. Stay classy, guys. Fang helps Anon to his feet and calls a cab for the both of them. When the cabbie gets here, the driver is based on the Monarch from the Venture Brothers. Apparently Skin Row is such a shitty part of town that the cabbie refuses to drive all the way to Anon's apartment, instead dropping them off nearby. Fang helps Anon walk to his place, and on the way they get first aid supplies from a liquor store. Anon takes a shower, and when he gets out, Fang puts icy hot on his bruises. This moment causes Anon to confess his feelings to Fang, and in a hilarious twist, we learn that every time Anon has been narrating, he's actually been speaking out loud to himself quietly. Fang reciprocates Anon's feelings, and now they're officially dating. The two spend the night together, and surely Fang's father is losing his mind over this.
Let's recap briefly. No one is okay. Anon definitely isn't. He never wanted to be known by anyone for anything besides anonymous posts on internet forums, and now the entire school knows who he is and sees him as a waifu-ogling weeb. Plus, he went down the stairs Omori style. Fang has never been okay, and now Trish, their main source of emotional support, has betrayed them and humiliated the guy they had a crush on in front of the whole school. Trish isn't okay either. Not only did her elaborate plan to show the world that Anon is some kind of secret pervert backfire, she may be losing her best friend over it. Trish may be obsessive and controlling, but she genuinely wants what's best for Fang. It just seems like she might not actually know what that is. Reed seems to be holding it together alright, but he's clearly shaken up about what Trish did, especially how she used him as a tool to embarrass Anon. I'm sure he's going to be hitting the Carfe even harder than normal to cope with things. Nasser isn't okay. He spent most of the game getting yelled at by either Fang or their dad, no matter what he does, and he's definitely going to be dealing with the fallout of Fang spending the night in a dude's apartment. Naomi is... Actually, Naomi's doing fine. Her plan to bring Anon and Fang together is working, though not as intended, since Nasser is under even more stress now. I guess her presentation did get ruined. She seems like the kind of person who would be extremely upset about that. Anyway, can we make the right choices to get all of these damaged people to be the best versions of themselves and prevent this comedy from becoming a tragedy? No, we can't. Our choices did matter earlier. Now, the story will become extremely different based on which ending we got, and all we can do is watch the consequences of our actions play out. So, this is where I'm ending Part 1. Part 2 will be an in-depth look at each of the game's 4 endings. I'll try to get it out as soon as possible, though I have my full-time day job on top of this. I'm gonna say that Part 2 should be out in mid to late May. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you'd like, you can click the thumbs to help me gain favor from the almighty algorithm. I'll see you in the next one. Later.